Hello everyone. So today we are going to discuss about indicative planning. Okay. So coming to the subject, after 2 decades of the Soviet planning was commenced, so the idea of new planning received attention from the democratic world. So especially from the democratic countries, they attracted and they given attention towards the one new important planning, so that is known as imperative planning. Okay, so a time came the idea of planning received attention. Okay, so here that is known as when such economies started national planning, as they were neither state economies nor the communist economies. Okay, so socialist or communist economies or state economies. Okay, but the nature of their planning was different from the command economies. Okay, so such planning has been termed as the indicative planning by the economists and experts. So here their nature of the planning is very different from the command economies. So that's why, of course, they are the state economies, communist economies, socialistic economies, but their nature of the planning is very different from the command economies. So that is a centrally planned economies. Even though they are implementing the national planning, but they're different in nature. So such planning is known as indicative planning. That is defined as the indicative planning. Okay, so coming to the important features of the indicative planning, so first one is every economy following the indicative planning, so those economies must be the mixed economies. Okay, so each and every country is following the mixed economy. Okay, so those mixed economies only following the indicative planning. Okay, and coming to the next point, so that is unlike a centrally planned economy, that is command economies, countries following the imperative planning, those are known as command economies, are centrally planned, pure centrally planned economy. So indicative planning works through the market. Okay, I already said imperative planning, market never involved, only state has a responsibility. Whenever comes to the indicative planning, so here there was a importance was given to the market. It means a price system was given to the indicative planning in the mixed economy. Okay, in the same way, numerical quantitative targets are also set by the planning. Okay, so similarly in imperative planning also they have to set some important numerical targets, quantitative targets. Okay, here also there are some set of policies of indicative nature is also announced by the planning targets. Just they have the planning targets. And fourth one is the indicative nature of economic policies which are announced in such planning. Basically they have to encourage or discourage the private sector in this process. Okay, the indicative nature of the economic policies, they also announce such plannings, but here they may encourage or discourage the private sector. Okay, so after converting to the mixed economy by the 1940s, almost all countries they converted from the state economy to the mixed economy, communist economy to the mixed economy. Okay, so France commenced and announced its first 6-year plan in 1947. So here which received a popularity. Okay, so this is known as Monet plan. Okay, so because Monet was the first chairman of the General Planning Commission in France, and he was the cabinet minister for planning also. So that's why the given name for the first 6-year plan was Monet plan. Okay, so here Monet planning is very similar to the indicative planning. Okay, it means that is a market intervention and mixed economy. Okay, so this plan is also sometimes can be described as the basic sector planning, as the government had selected 8 basic industries. Okay, so sometimes this plan can be called as the basic sector planning. Why? Because it had selected some 8 basic industries of the development, so with the nature of the almost imperative, so those under the state monopoly, so it means the sectors owned by the private sector. For example, so till 1944 Till 1944 in the France, those eight basic industries were under the control of the private sector. Whenever it was opted the nationalism, so those are comes under the state economy. Okay, state government. So those are the eight basic basic industries only. Okay. And the next other economic activities were open to the private participation whenever it was implemented the indicative type of the policy planning. Okay, so here the policy planning of indicative type is very essential. Okay, so here France and Japan are very important and they are following the indicative planning with great success. Okay, the two countries are very important countries which adopted the indicative planning and they had the success also. Okay, so in 1965 United Kingdom also commences such a planning with national plan. Okay, so the nature is a indicative planning at the national planning level. Okay, and it was leaved it in 1966 whenever there was a balance of BOP crisis, balance of payment crisis. So that's why it lived in 1966, even though at present also United Kingdom never opted the indicative planning. Okay, and the first use of the economic planning as an instrument of the economic progress was started and carried by the United States, especially in 1960s. So there was a Tennessee Valley Authority at the regional level. Okay, so that's why it never opted a formal national planning, because whenever they adopted the regional level planning, so it got the economic progress. So that's why it never opted formal national planning. Okay. So basically, the indicative planning, which is practiced by the mixed economies, right? At the first also we discussed. So here the growth targets can only be achieved once the public and private enterprises work in tandem. Okay. So whenever the public and private enterprises work with coordination and just there was a friendly nature between the public and private, so the mixed economies can get the growth targets, they can achieve the targets. Okay, so that's why beside the planning of your country, just we have to announce some set of indicative policies just to encourage the and motivate the private sector to accelerate into the economic activities at the desired level. Okay, so after Second World War, almost all of the newly independent countries, they adopted the route of planned development. Okay, so they followed an overall model of the indicative planning because it is very convenient planning for all the countries, because at present each and every country, so they are involving the market and price system. So that's why indicative planning is very important one. So many of them had a serious inclination towards the imperative planning also. Okay, so mostly today there's so many countries they started a mixed economy and around the world, and each and every country is development has a developmental planning. So those to be the indicative nature. Okay. Even India also has bias towards the imperative planning. It means a socialistic type of the planning. But whenever there was economic reforms was started in 1991, it also could be turned to the indicative type of the planning. Okay. So, after the revival of the role and need of the market in promoting growth and development, so there's so many consensus were there. It means so many reforms, so many important principles were given by different countries. For example, Washington Consensus in 1985, World Trade Organization in 1995, Santiago Consensus in 1998. Okay, so these are very important ones to promote the market. So, only indicative planning has remained possible with state planning only marginal role in the economy. Okay, it means whenever we adopted indicative planning, so we have to maintain market and state also at the same time. So especially in the areas of a social importance, just we need indicative type of the planning. Okay, So social importance is nothing but providing the nutrition to the people, providing health care and safe drinking water, education, social security. So these are very important features comes under the social importance. Especially for providing the important features in these areas, just we have to maintain the indicative type of the planning. Okay.